Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So, as it's October, it's officially spooky month. I want to do a few videos on topics that terrify me. Could this be a spooky paranormal clown world? This episode isn't so much about the external, but more of how dark the recesses of your own mind can go. Today, we're going to be talking about Salvia Divinorum. For those of you who don't know, salvia used to be a legal high, at least classified in England, until maybe someone died? Probably. It's been theorised that it was a legal high for so long because if you took too much of it, you were never going to do it again. Now, personally, on my channel, I'm very upfront and honest about my previous drug usage. Dad, please don't watch this video. I am now 6-7 months sober from all drugs, alcohol, the whole lot. Straight edge, I know, me. But I never tried classic hallucinogens. I've never tried DMT, ayahuasca, LSD, magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and even salvia. I've never done it. And for good reason. I have something called dissociation disorder, depersonalization and derealization. So even if I wasn't, leading this straight edge sober lifestyle, if I were to do drugs like that, or even ketamine can affect it, or even weed, I go loopy and my brain goes in another dimension. It's hard enough drinking coffee sometimes. The closest I would ever get to tripping is when I do far too much MDMA and start to see things, or worse, a few times when I smoked weed on MDMA, come down and went to another dimension, subsequently lost my mind a little bit, never came all the way back. I'm giving you this context because I love reading about the bad trip reports on salvia on a website called Erowid. They freak me the fuck out. As someone with dissociation, if you take too much salvia, you disassociate completely, and we'll read out some examples. But for example, if you smoke too much of it and say you're looking at a tree, you might then suddenly imagine that you are a tree, you have been a tree your entire life, and your human life was just a dream that you made up to distract from the fact that you are a tree forever. As someone whose brain has been to another dimension and I thought I was trapped forever as a line string theory, who knows, that terrifies me, and so I love reading about that stuff. Hence why we are going to read some trip reports today. To start off my spooky series, of course, what would really be spooky is if I actually do manage to make this into a series and do more than one video on scary topics, and not just give up with this halfway into another video. One more thing also, I should be very clear, I'm quite non-judgmental about a whole variety of subjects, and I think if you can take hallucinogens, then more power to you. If you can take something like DMT and have an amazing experience, then that's fantastic. I'm quite jealous that someone with my brain, it just wouldn't be possible at this moment in time. Well, I'm meant to be living a clean and sober lifestyle kind of forever, so But if you can go and party with the machine elves and come back in one piece, then more power to you. Report 1. Gave me PTSD. Salvia Divinorum, 80 times extract. That's another thing. When you could buy this in the shop as a legal high, you could get different strengths. It would be like 10 times, 60 times, 100 times. A few of my friends actually did salvia, and they said it was like they felt they were being folded in half like a piece of paper and couldn't move properly. Into the report. So after a little reading and a few videos of people tripping on salvia, I decided to try it out. My sister and I went to the head shop and bought a can of sticky purple 80 times and a glass bong. Now, I've done well into 500 hits of acid, more than 20 pounds of reefer, and more than my fair share of opium. Weird flex. Doing this was just something to do with shits and giggles, so after getting back to my house, we went out to my garage and prepared to try out a product that I expected to do little to nothing. I packed my glass bong with ice and loaded a bowl as tight as I could get it. My sister, being a little more hesitant, said that I should go first. I told her if I was going to go first, I'm catching my bowl and she should reload, so that's how it went. I put the bong up to my mouth and took a rather large hit. I felt a sensation going over my body that no word could describe. It was like the first time I had sex mixed with the first time I broke a law. It felt good and terrible at the same time. I exhaled and quickly took another, hoping for the pure joy being masked by terror would go. A few seconds into holding that hit in, I couldn't feel my legs. It was alarming, but I figured I had been this far down the rabbit hole, I may as well meet Alice. I blew out the hit and noticed it had an orange tone to it. I slowly took my last hit and drew it deep and large. I felt a large pop in my existence. You may be wondering at this point what I mean by pop, but as best as I could explain it, it was like my soul was being peeled from my body like one piece of bread from another on a toast cheese sandwich. I know what you mean, like getting a grilled cheese and just insanity, never feeling so delicious. Suddenly I'm in another world. I no longer existed. I was part of something much larger. I can't explain what that larger was, but I hated it. It was painful when trying to rip me apart. I was part of it, this large mass of vibrant colours. It was trying to tear me up and mix me into whatever it was, much like taking 20 pieces of chewed up gum and mixing them all together. I was only one colour, but the other colours were trying to make us one by destroying the singular forms. I could verbalise my thoughts, and I said in this world, what kind of cruel fucker does this? I was just born and now I'm going to be torn into pieces. Are you fucking kidding me? I sort of can relate. I tried to think of who I was, but I knew I wasn't a he anymore and more of an it. I had the thought of, if I can make it a few more minutes, help will be here to remove me from this mass that I'm a part of. Slowly the mass dissolved and I could see a face. I didn't recognise the face because it wasn't attached to anything. It was just a floating face. The face said, do I need to call an ambulance? Say something, for Christ's sake, say something. I verbalised without thinking or trying, I'm back. Minutes later, after being helped to my feet, I still couldn't understand where I was at, but I did understand that my wife and sister were both very worried about something. I finally figured out a few more minutes later that I was in my garage with my wife and sister. I knew I had gone somewhere and what had happened there, but no understanding of exactly where that somewhere was. I understand this. I feel this. I decided I need to leave the crime scene right now. So we went outside to my deck and sat and smoked. The rain started, but my head still wasn't there. Realising I'm sweating like a pig, somehow I understood that my sister was getting covered by my perspiration, so I was embarrassed by it, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stay outside either. I decided I'd go to my room for a bit and relax. After laying down on my couch and watching about half an hour of whatever weird shit was on my TV, I went downstairs, unable to speak of the world I went to. After months of thought and reading, I've noticed the similarities between my trip and a near-death experience to hell. My life really did change that way. I stopped smoking, started exercising, changed my diet, dropped 15 pounds. I'm in the best physical shape of my life. But I'm also on Xanax to help with the anxiety at night I feel thinking of that hell I was in. My physician said I have post-traumatic stress disorder, even though she has no knowledge of the trip I took. It's been 5 months and I'm still not feeling perfectly mentally healthy. The next trip report. Reliving my death over and over again. I had no idea what to expect taking Salvia. My wife and I live in the high Arctic, Resolute Bay, and we try to stay away from booze and drugs because they have unpredictable results in such a small and isolated place. We ordered Salvia, and after being held by Health Canada for over a month, we finally received it, albeit open packaging. We locked ourselves in our room and began to explore. Coming from a chemistry, ethnobotanical educational background, I of course started small, waiting for the effects and worked my way up. Having LSD-like visuals that were quite manageable, I delved into the 20 times. Strength. My world crumbled. Reality fell apart but didn't at the same time. I already experienced some synesthesia naturally, but all my senses became one. Geometry was completely absurd but made sense. I felt as if I was part of everything around me, literally, but in a bad way. Part of a song played over and over in thin time slices. I felt myself fall to the ground over and over, but just the point of impact mixed with everything simultaneously. Something went bang inside my head and I felt I was dead, but it's like time tried to stop but skidded or blurred in that last moment by inertia. All that was me before, my thoughts, but future, felt completely non-existent. All I was a feeling of tragic mishap of dying too soon. Somebody called my name, Corey, as I was falling, but it was too late. All I could do was feel, watch, sense myself in my last moment. There was no soul, no heaven, only my own private hell of my being in the flesh, literally separating by momentum of a sort into the slices of matter, space and time. I felt my head thoughts, my me coming apart and blending into the materials around me, taking on some residual personality in the inanimate around me. I experienced not fear but a tenacity to hang on, not slip into everything. There was no peace, no rest, just that moment stretched in time to infinity. People became little balls of denser, more active energy on a board of orange-coloured energy. The people were evenly spread like a grid, and they were green light in a tight ball. One's action would jiggle others around it. I saw my life so far, dying at that point as absolutely worthless, and only one thought came crystal clear through this. You didn't get it, Corey, you just didn't get it. All that mattered in the last very fraction of a second was who I was in the moment in time, and what effect I had on the little blips, people close by me. But I just didn't get it. I had net negative impact on those around me by dying prematurely, and my action just prior. I was relieved when I came back, to say the least. In all, I had lost 3 hours of real time. I think the pipe hadn't been hot enough for a while and it all hit at once when I really heated it properly. I tried the sage again 4 more times. All the same experience over and over, just shorter real-time duration, 10 to 20 minutes. A door closes, very slight deviations, but the same horror. I walked around like a ghost for 3 days thinking I had seen my own death. Why did you do it several times then? I flipped out twice on a mixture of drugs once and I've never taken them again. That was a few years ago and I'm still dealing with the repercussions of it now, albeit slightly, because you just, you know, you go to therapy, you get better at dealing with these things. But once that happened once, I never did it again. So it's wild to me that someone's like, yeah, I smoked some salvia and it was fucked up and I saw my death. Better do it a few more times. My wife saw herself being made in front of her. She was the church-like gown, you know, the angelic kind. She saw behind her hung up thousands of these gowns, and they were people, but I was a carpet on the floor. She said we were all made of the earth, all material the same everywhere, but we all had a purpose. The experience was so overwhelming for her, she spent half an hour being sick because the realization was so intense after. She kept saying while she was under, I'm not supposed to see this, I'm not supposed to be here. Interesting, a woman experiences creation, a man experiencing destruction and assimilation in this case, but they tie together at the ends into a loop. She is a devout Christian, by the way, I'm not even close, and she saw what she didn't think she believed, that we are the same matter, energy as everything too. Salvia, I can say, has changed my outlook on life, but this is no recreational drug. It is a tool that is sacred and has to be used properly and respected. I found things moved around in the room after I came back to this realm. I found out too that I left the room for some time. My wife has a little cousin who just suicided a little south of us. She was using salvia pretty heavily for 2 weeks just before she ended her life. I don't know if there's a relationship, but I sense there is one. I say keep this shit away from kids, whatever you do. We were not in control with this substance. The last trip report for this video. The paper prison world. I had tried salvia 3 times before this experience, but they paled in comparison to the intensity and magnitude of the one I'm about to describe. The first 2 times were in combination with cannabis, and I experienced mild to non-existent effects. The third time, which happened about a week before this trip, was much stronger and more pleasant than what I'd felt in my initial tries. Encouraged by this, I was very eager and excited when a friend of mine offered up some leftover fortified salvia extract for me at a reduced price. I bought it, and the next afternoon I gathered with 2 good friends at one of their houses to enjoy my newly acquired substance. We gathered around in a small circle in his room, with me sitting on the bed with his bong. I packed the first bowl for myself and took my hit. I felt the effects instantly, as soon as I started letting out the harsh, strange tasting smoke. Does it work? My friend M asked. Fuck yeah, I replied, as I felt my body being slowly pulled towards my side, down onto the bed by some bizarre force. As soon as I laid down, the panic began. I shot up to look at my friends, and they told me later that I was speaking fast, loud, unintelligible snippets of partly English and bizarre gibberish. This caused them to laugh, and as they started laughing, my true terror set in. My friend's room morphed into what I can only describe as a paper prison world. I began zooming away from this, and the paper world grew larger and larger. My perspective became 1,000 times clearer with every passing second. The only way I can describe it is as if I was trapped within the pages of a book. My friend's laughter grew more sinister and malicious, and I suddenly came to the total realization that everything I'd ever known or thought to be real was totally false, a complete lie. My friends, 2 guys I'd been close with for 2.5 years, had been in on it the whole time. They hated me. This was all a huge game. I attempted to rip or escape my way from this prison. According to my friends at this time, I was shouting things like, oh god, and what the fuck, while throwing my friend's sheets around wildly. The colours of the room became sickeningly bright and overwhelmingly vivid. It sounded as though the walls were screaming at me in mockery. Every time I crawled out from one page of my trap, I realised that I had only brought myself into a larger part of it. There was absolutely no escape to be had whatsoever. I knocked over my friend Jay's fan in an attempt to break this terrifying cycle, and he propped it back up, which I automatically interpreted to mean he was saying, this is it, this is forever, you can't stop this. I was so frightened and disorientated that I ran outside my friend's room, out his door, into the front yard, trying my best to escape my traitorous companions and the unbearable place they put me in. Never once did it occur to me that any of this could be caused by the salvia. I stood in the middle of the side street outside my friend's house, screaming as loudly as I could, what the fuck, what the fuck. As I shouted, I stopped and noticed the street signs were those from my city, with names that I recognised. This clued me in that perhaps I truly escaped this time and was back in the real world. M had just taken his hit before I went out the door, so while he was thrown into another intensely unpleasant experience, Jay stepped outside to help me get back from the street. By now I had calmed down a little, enough to trust this guy, and I went back into the house to be with him. When we went into his room, we sat down and Jay took his hit. Time jumped around and skipped all over the place, and before I knew it, my friends were sitting by me, shaking, saying this was so bad, this was so fucking bad. Em and I both had extremely enjoyable time with the salvia, while Jay seemed to not have such a difficult trip. The effects wore off completely in the next 20 minutes or so, and I was left amazed at what a powerful hallucinogen Salvia Divinorum truly is. In all my drug-taking experiences, I have never once felt so endangered and out of control. Everything seemed perfectly real, and it took about an hour to totally shake the feeling that reality wasn't an insidious paper construction. So there you have it. Those are a few trip reports of what Salvia Divinorum is like. I'm personally never ever going to try it. I'm very glad that I didn't try it when my friends were going through a phase during our teenage years of trying it, because I have a feeling that if I ever had done it whilst I was a teenager, I'd have gone very insane very quickly. My mind is just not, my brain is made of too much spaghetti to deal with that kind of drama. Anyway, I'm older now. I've lived my life. I've done things. Try not to live with regrets. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys don't do drugs. Just make sure you know what you're doing and you're in a safe place and you're with people that you trust. Maybe wait until you're older, like in your 20s though. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like, comment, subscribe. I make new videos every week, and I'll see you next time.